All right. So, how's it going, Jeff?
Very, very good.
Good. So, I was going to start off with the news that broke a couple weeks ago now. You and George were working on a follow up to Heavy Hitters, but I want to shift gears a little bit. Something
Whatever
else
you want to
came
do.
up. You guys are touring with Kid Rock, which is interesting. That is not a combination I think that I would ever thought I would hear.
Well, you want to know something? We actually toured with Kid Rock in 2015, and
Really?
it was extremely successful, and it really set us up next very well for I believe it was the next year. I think it was the next year or the year after, where we did a big headlining run, a shed run, and it was great for that. So we're thinking it's a nice thing to do. We didn't want to do the full on big headlining tour this year. So in lieu of that, we thought it was a better idea to do this, and I think it's going to be great. And he gets a great audience, and his audience seems to love us, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, you guys happen to be like 2.5 hours from me on my birthday, no less. So
Wow, which is
I'll
where?
definitely. That's the one in PNC.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
I'll try to be around for that.
Nice, nice.
So now we're gonna go to what I was originally gonna start with. So you've obviously done a lot. So I'm gonna start. I'll start with the Lynch and Pilson stuff. Then we'll go back to the start, work our way up, and then finish with Foreigner because that'll be the big hook to get everybody stay around. So
Great.
you and George are working on the follow up to your 2020 album, Heavy Hitters. How did you guys like? What was the idea to start from the first one 2 years ago?
Well, the way it all came about is George had done a record, and he was re-releasing it through another label, and the label wanted, which was Cleopatra Records, and they wanted to add a bonus song to it, and they wanted him to cover this pop song. So he said yes, and then he called me and he said, "Hey, do you want to do this with me?" I said, "Sure." So we did it. It came out great. We got this guy Will Martin to sing on the song. It was the song "Somebody to Love" by oh God, I'm spacing out his name now. Uh, Louis Capaldi, sorry. And we did that song. Came out great. Kind of rocked it out a little bit, but it was kind of an interesting formula. So, like I say, the label loved that, and then as a result, they said, "How would you like to do a whole record of that?" So we did. So that one came out great. This year, we've got a little bit different plan for the Heavy Hitters record. It's going to be a little more of a like a raw 70s rock band doing these hit songs. We kind of have an interesting take on that. Going for a little more of an organic thing this time between with the band. And then we've got a guy by the name of Bernard Fowler doing the singing, who is absolutely wonderful. Great, great singer. He's background singer for the Rolling Stones, that
Oh,
little
nice.
unknown band. Great
Yeah.
guy, great singer. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah. So how do you guys pick what? Because there's been you guys have done songs from like Oasis, Carole King, Prince. How do you guys pick what songs to cover?
We just made this huge list, and and then whittled it down and played around with them. Which one feels right? What can we get out of this one? Can we do something interesting to this? And just kind of go by instinct.
So you say you're looking for more of a raw feel. Have you guys all been recording like at the same studio, or has this been just sending around
Yeah,
files?
no, we've been doing it all at my place here.
Yeah.
Uh, I believe Bernard's going to sing at a studio called Steakhouse in Hollywood. But yeah, everything else will be done here.
Yeah. How much do you record here? Because this looks amazing from what I'm seeing.
I do a lot of the records I work on. I do. It depends on the project. With Black Swan and End Machine, those are the two of the side projects I have. We
Yeah.
do all the tracks in here. Um, on other projects, like I say, sometimes singers will go outside. We're also using Brian Tishy again on drums, and we'll probably record some of the drums at his place, Headley Garage. And so it depends on the project, really.
All right. So now we're gonna head way back. You are a multi instrumentalist to like the fullest extent. So what was the first instrument that you picked up?
The very first instrument I played was cello, actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So did you have any aspirations to go further with that, or was that just
Well, I mean, not at first. I started playing cello, and I actually really liked it. But then, I started that when I was 11, and then when I was 12, I started playing the bass guitar. So I was playing cello throughout junior high and high school, and then in my senior year in high school, I changed over to string bass. Partly because I was a bass player, and partly because I wanted to go to the University of Washington and major in string bass. So I changed over, did really well with that. And then once I got to college, I realized I just wanted to rock out. I didn't really want to do classical music. I mean, there's a lot of great classical music out there, but I kind of felt, yeah.
And so when did you start with keys?
Not too long after I played cello, actually. I think I started playing, I forget exactly, but around in there. Sometimes I was like 11 or 12, something like that. And basically I was self-taught. I did the old thing where, somebody showed me, every 3 notes is a chord, so I kind of figured it out, and I started figuring out Beatles songs, and I've got enough music theory and whatnot that I can kind of make sense of it. But yeah, I'm mostly self-taught on keys.
Nice. So were you in a lot of bands growing up, like a lot of kind of
Sure.
like bar bands or?
Sure. Bar bands, top 40 bands, all that stuff. Original bands. I had my own crazy original bands, yeah, I mean, I did all the usual stuff that young musicians do.
So before Dokken, what was the, like, I guess, biggest break that you had, kind of? What was the biggest success you had before Dokken?
In 1980, I was on a record called Rock Justice, and it was a rock opera that we were doing in San Francisco. And I played bass on that, and I was also the part of the lead singer, and I sang 4 songs on that record. So that was probably the biggest thing I did before Dokken.
And so then, and you can sing too. It's not like you are a really good singer. There's been Dokken demos released with your voice on it. What was behind those? What was like, why did they have Jeff Pilson sing on some Dokken songs and then choose to switch it to Don? Was that just for the demo purpose, or?
Yeah, that was just to show the song to Don, and I don't know how that stuff ended up out there, but yeah, I mean, it was always done just here's how it, because George and I would write it, and then we'd want to demo it to show the idea. So there you go.
Yeah. So how did you get started in Dokken? Who was the first person that you met?
Oh, right. Well, what happened is I had just moved to LA. I moved to LA in like spring of 83, and now this is summer of 83. And there's a guy by the name of Mike Varney, who is kind of known for getting a lot of musicians together. And he's a wonderful friend. He and I were in bands together up in the Bay Area. But he was kind of known by the early 80s. He was kind of known as this guy that got musicians together, and he had an article in Guitar Player magazine. Anyways, Don Dokken had called Mike and said, hey, do you know of any singing bass players? And he said, hey, I happen to know somebody that just moved to LA. So he put Don and I together. I met with Don, and then the next time we got together, I met with all of them. So there you go. And then we played and had an audition that lasted 20 minutes. We blew the power, and then they asked me if I wanted to join the band.
It all worked out. So
it all worked out. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys were all co-writers on the album. So how did your writing processes compare to one another's?
Well, George and I kind of had a system. We wrote a lot of the music together, and we also wrote quite a few of the lyric and melody ideas too. And he and I we just have a great collaboration. I mean, he just left here a few minutes ago. I mean, we just have a wonderful collaboration. There's no ego, whatever it takes, make it better. Don, I work well with Don. Don is, he would be, he wrote a lot of the music too. I mean, he wrote some of the great riffs and stuff. But I think lyrics were probably his specialty, lyrics and melodies. He's always been a great lyricist, Don has. And he has great melody ideas. I think when he and I worked together, we really took the melodies to the next step. But it's hard to comment on how our things are different because it's so much about the chemistry of working together.
For sure, yes.
And really that's what's kind of important with Dokken is the way we work together. The best Dokken songs really were collaborative in a lot of senses. And even though, we were known for not getting along musically, when we connected, we really connected.
Yeah. So, and then that gets us to in '88, that surprised me. That was earlier than I thought you guys broke up. But had that been brewing for a while? And did you have plans to, like,
Yeah,
oh, when
no,
this is done, I'm doing.
I very much thought that it was going to break up. We didn't actually officially break up till March of '89, but yeah, I knew it was coming, and that's why I had a band called, well, originally it was called Flesh and Blood, and then I had to change it to War and Peace. But that's why I was playing with Vinny Appice and Randy Hansen and Michael Diamond. But the plan, I mean, I always in the back of my mind wanted George and Mick and I to, work with somebody else. I wanted to sing at that time. So, and then that just didn't happen. So, yes, I had plans. Yes, I had somewhere to go. But then it kind of fizzled out because the whole music change that happened when the grunge thing came in.
Yeah, that seems to be the story for a lot too.
Sure. Sure.
So then you guys got back together in '94. You, George, and Mick did end up working together, and Don was still there. Did you have any plans to do anything not involving Don at that time?
Not at that time, no.
So how did you guys? Because it was originally Don was bringing George back, so it could be called a Dokken album. How did you and Mick then get brought back into it?
Well, actually, I was brought in first because Don and I started writing together early in '92. And we wrote a lot of what became the Dysfunctional record. And then in '93, I ended up joining Dio because I kind of had realized that it wasn't going to be a Dokken reunion. And I didn't feel as strong about it if it wasn't a Dokken reunion. So I joined Dio, and then George agreed to join in '94, and that's when we reformed.
So Dysfunctional sold around 300,000 copies, which for '94, which we were talking about grunge, that is astounding. So similar bands were going down. Why do you think that album was so successful?
Well, partly because I think our fan base was really ready for it. Partly because we were on Columbia and we had John Kolodner behind us, who was, he was just a monster in the music business and in the industry. So he was very helpful. And then, we toured it and promoted it like crazy.
So, all right, we're going to skip a little bit ahead. This is just something I'm wondering. You had Underground Moon with Tommy Henriksen, who's now in Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
You performed under the pseudonym of Dominic Moon.
Yes.
So can you just talk a little bit about why you chose to do that?
Well, because my original intent for Underground Moon was to not be compared with Dokken. The music was so radically different that I suspected if my name was on there, that immediately they were going to throw it away and say, well, that doesn't sound like, So by being somebody new, kind of fun for one, but also it was a way of being, I wanted to be taken seriously and without the bias of the Dokken history. So that was the reason for that. Of course, it's kind of hard to get away with things like that.
A little bit.
But it was fun while it lasted.
So then you kind of went the opposite direction. Then you went back together with George, and you guys had Lynch Pilson. You released Wicked Underground. So why was that? Why was that change of heart to kind of not really embrace Dokken, but I mean, if you and George come back together, people expect.
I mean, different projects do different things, and when George and I get together, of course, it's gonna. We were also, when George and I, Lynch Pilson was also an attempt at being. We didn't want to be exactly like Dokken. We wanted it to be melodic, but we wanted it kind of new, heavy, and because that was the music we were listening to at the time. So it wasn't like as big a. I mean, it was a change from Underground Moon for sure, but they're just different projects. In different projects you want to handle things differently. And that's really where that came from.
And then, so Mick got brought in and you guys were Tooth and Nail and then TNN. Yeah. So you released Slave to the Empire. You had a lot of guest vocalists on that. I know one of them was Robert Mason of Lynch Mob and now Warrant. How did you guys find who the singers were on that album, and why didn't you? I mean, you could have sung a lot of those songs. So what was the choice
Well,
to have the guest
the
vocalist?
reason why I sang the new songs on the Slaves of the Empire record, and then the only Dokken song I re-sang was Into the Fire.
Yes.
But the whole idea was to get a take of different singers. So yeah, I mean, if anything, I think I sang too much on that record. But anyway, how did we get the singers? You know, you just kind of make calls and you figure out what song would be right for the guy. And, you know, you call your friends and see what they want to do.
Yeah. So at that time, if I'm not wrong, Mick was still drumming with Dokken as well, right?
I believe so, yes.
So how was that at all awkward? And like, were you or George still talking with Don at all?
Yeah, sure we were. Occasionally. Yeah, it was never really that awkward. I mean, yeah, Don didn't seem to have a problem with us doing that. I mean, I don't know why he would. You know, we like to play together, you know. Yeah. So I mean, can you fault us for that? And so yeah, no, it wasn't as awkward as you might think.
And so then you were also on Lynch Mob's 2015 album. Was that just George saying like, "Hey, do you want to come jam with us? We need a bassist."
Yeah, basically. Hey, do you want to play bass on this record? Yeah.
Yeah. And so then 2016, you guys got back together. You did some shows out in Japan. How long were those conversations going before everything, you know, like came out to the public?
Oh, months and months and months. Yeah, I mean, it took a long time. Guy by the name of Tom Mayhew, who he works for a lot of people, but he's been working for Guns N' Roses for years and years. He's kind of their, it's hard to describe what he is. He's kind of their production manager, overseer guy. He's just kind of this, anyways, and he's become quite the guy in the industry. And he was the one, he used to work for us in the 80s. So he was inspired to bring us together, and he made the connections in Japan and he pulled it all together. And we said yes. They made us an offer we couldn't refuse. And yeah, the deliberations beforehand they occasionally got ugly and they occasionally got weird, but you know, we worked it out and came up with a plan, and there we go.
And so you guys also got together, you had recorded a new track. How did the writing go down for that?
Basically we decided we were going to do actually, when George and I wrote the music for the track, it's called It's Another Day. When we wrote the music for that, I'm not sure what we were thinking, whether it was going to be a Dokken reunion or another one of our projects or whatever, but we had the track and Don heard it. He made some great suggestions. He had some really good suggestions for it. Mainly to speed it up. That was the suggestion he had. So we sped it up, and then Don came over. He had a vocal idea, and we kind of hammered it out and tweaked it together, and he did a vocal, and it just came out easy and natural. And once again, our chemistry was intact. So, you know,
have there been any talks about anything else in the future? Not necessarily if anything's happening, but have there been talks?
But never come to any, you know, you got to understand, you know, Don has his own version of the band now. Yep. So in a way, it would have to be worth at least 4 times as much as his version of Dokken.
We also got to get Mick out of retirement too.
Yeah. And plus we'd want to, and maybe if we couldn't do that, we'd probably get his brother Steve who plays the scene, who's great. And if you can't have Rick Brown, have Steve Brown by all means. Yeah, it just hasn't gone anywhere. We just haven't found the right time or desire or whatever. Like I say, a lot of it comes down to it has to be worth at least 4 times as much for Don to want to do it. So, and you can understand that. So yeah. And
so we're gonna jump a little bit back now. Robert Mason was one of the vocalists on Slave to the Empire. What made at the time, the 3 of you, now Mick is obviously Steve, but at the time, what made the 3 of you want to form a whole different project in the End Machine with Robert Mason?
Well, that was actually Serafino Perugino, who from Frontiers Records. It was kind of his thing. And it all kind of started on this weird project. George was going to do work on a Jack Russell solo album. And he called me up and asked me if I wanted to write for it. So I said, sure. So we started writing a lot of the music. And then it fell apart with him doing the Jack Russell solo record, but we had all this music. That's when Serafino said, well, why don't you get Mick Brown and and he actually suggested Robert Mason because Warrant was signed to his label as well. And both of them loved the idea. We loved the idea, and the chemistry was immediate.
And then, so speaking of chemistry, my next question was about Black Swan. That's you, Robin McCauley, Red Beach, and then Matt Starr.
Yeah.
All you guys have established yourselves like apart from each other. How was that writing an album with those guys?
Well, really natural because Reb and I have a great chemistry. We did a Dokken record
yeah,
in the 90s, and that's when we learned we had that great chemistry. So when the opportunity came up, Serafino basically asked me if I wanted to put together another, super group, as he calls them.
You have a lot of those.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah, too many. But no, only when I try and explain it. Anyway, so I put that to, so I offered it to Reb because I knew he and I had a great chemistry, and he said he'd love to do it. We got to write together. It was great. So his and my chemistry was immediate. And then Robin and I have a great chemistry. So, Robin wrote a lot of the lyrics and melodies. Then he came in here, and then we'd kind of tweak on them together. And sometimes I'd write something with it would go back and forth. But the writing was really smooth on Black Swan. That's the thing. Everybody's such a great musician. They're so good at what they do. They're such great writers. So it's just all good chemistry, and it's down to that makes it happen.
And so before we get into some foreigner questions, because how many projects do you actively have? Like
hard to say. I guess 5 or something like that. I don't know. I don't know.
And there's probably like some on the back burner that could just come back at any point.
I mean, I'm producing things. There's a bunch of little things. So.
Yeah. So, but it all adds up to a very high number.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're gonna circle around to Foreigner. So how did you get involved in Foreigner? How did you like make connections with those people to be brought in? Was it auditions or?
Well, no, not really. Basically, so in the year 2000, I did a movie called Rockstar, and with me in the movie was Jason Bonham, who's the son of Led Zeppelin drummer John Bonham. And Jason and I just really hit it off well during the movie. We wrote a song, although I don't think it made the final cut of the movie, but it made the record. And so we just connected. So then in 2004, he was working with Mick Jones, and they weren't really sure whether it was going to be Foreigner or what at that point, but they called me up and asked me to come down, and I did. And the chemistry was immediate. And then Jason pretty much talked Mick into revamping Foreigner. So there I was, and the chemistry was in place, and it was just immediate.
So how has it been kind of compared to other bands you've been in? Because it's not entirely out of left field, but it is not on the same track as, like Dokken.
Well, it seems that way, but honestly, especially if you see Foreigner live, Foreigner's pretty heavy. Yes. I mean, we're pretty high energy live. So it's not as different as you think. What's different about Foreigner is, Foreigner is one band that is. Anyway, Foreigner, like Dokken was a democracy. Black Swan and Machine, all those are, pretty much democracy bands. In Foreigner, Mick Jones is absolutely the boss, but he loves to let everybody feel really involved and do their thing. So it's a little more focused when you have one guy in charge like that. And, listen, the guy has a track record that's unbelievable. So, it all works.
So how has it been for you to be playing mainly songs that you did not write or record? Like, do you kind of take, not really liberties, but do you, make it your own, or do you play it exactly how it is on the record?
I'm a if it ain't broke, don't fix it guy. So I love most of the Foreigner bass parts. So I try to stay pretty true to them most of the time. I mean, I'm not concerned about making it my own, but I think I have an ability to kind of, whatever I'm doing, really absorb myself in. So that's my own version of making it my own. and we do plenty of improvisations and stretching songs out and things like that. So that, in that sense, I kind of get to make it my own without even trying. So it's a great combo. Let me just check these.
And so then you guys have kind of had not really a wrench thrown in the works, but Mick he's not stopped touring, but he's reduced the number of shows he's doing, which on many shows that makes you now the longest tenured member of Foreigner.
Yeah.
So how has that been, having to step into a pretty big role?
Again, not as difficult as you think because it's happened slowly over time. The main thing is we just really believe in Mick's vision. So we do our best to try and really keep it to where he likes it and where we like it. So it's not as difficult as you might think. It all comes very naturally.
Yeah, I saw you guys in August, and I thought that it would be odd, but it just felt like it belonged.
Yeah. I mean, we do the songs a lot of justice. So
yes,
with Kelly's voice and Kelly's energy, it all really works. I hate to say it, but whether Mick is there or not, it's gonna work,
Yeah. And so we noticed, especially, you looked like you had so much energy. You were sprinting up and down the stage. Was that from maybe having the year and a half of not playing shows? You were just so amped to be out there again that you were just...
Well, that's kind of who I am usually. Like
this look turned up to 11.
No question that having that year and a half off made us really appreciate what we do. That's for sure.
Yeah. So what were you doing more during that time off? Were you just writing and recording?
A lot of writing and recording and a lot of Netflix with the family. Like everybody else.
Yeah. So looking into 2022, what do you want to accomplish this year?
Well, Foreigner's got a lot of touring ahead of us.
Yes.
A new Black Swan record is coming out in April. We're actually filming a video on Sunday. So the new Black Swan record coming out, very excited about that. It's a real strong record. And then, like I say, touring with Foreigner like crazy. And I've also got another project that I'm doing that I can't announce yet, but
right.
But when they announce it, it's really cool. And I have a whole record to record of that's going to come out towards the end of the year. So a lot on my plate.
Yep. So,
and then of course the heavy hitters will probably come out at the end of the year. The next heavy hitters. So
yeah, you guys have the Vegas residency coming up in April. We're going to Vegas and we're getting in that night, like the last night of the show, and I'm so mad that I'm. And it's at the hotel that we're staying at too, and I'm gonna miss it, and I'm mad. All right, is there any closing remarks that you'd like to leave the people with?
Just glad we could finally do this and glad it all worked out. And just thank you to everybody who buys the music and supports the music, because without you, we wouldn't be able to do this.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If it focuses, it's not going to focus. Jeff Pilson. There we go.
There it is. Titanium Jeff Pilson.
Which he definitely gave to me, and I didn't pick up off the floor at Bridgeport because somebody somehow missed it.
Yeah.
Straight from the source.
There you go.
Jeff.
Hey, thank you, Sam. Appreciate it, man. Bye-bye.
You have a good one.